Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, which one's better? Which one sucks?
It's interesting because it depends on how you're measuring that action, because all of my focus right now is YouTube. YouTube is our long-term play. At the beginning of this year, I decided to commit 1,000 days to mastering YouTube. So that's our primary content channel for the next about 3 years. So that's the platform that's growing the fastest. It's the platform that's getting the most engagement right now, but it's not the best for sales. It's the best for leads, but it's not the best for sales. The best for sales, like direct listener rate to conversion rate, podcast. Like
Really?
no joke, like no question. Podcast to conversion is definitely I actually have a team member who was saying, we don't have like a free Facebook community, right? But he's like, our community lives on podcast. It's like, that's where the community is. That's where when people he's our community manager. He's like, when people talk to me directly and I ask them, how do you get into one of our paid programs? They're all like, oh, I've been listening to podcasts forever. I would podcast if I didn't get paid for it and no one was listening. Like audio is my mechanism. That's how I communicate.
I mean, you look like a guy that should be on audio.
Yeah, we call him Radio Face Ryan. I actually had a show in college at the radio station. I went by Radio Face Ryan.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like radio, audio. That's my modality. So that's not work for me. Of course, like the standard answer is the best content is the one that you will do consistently, the one that you actually enjoy. Though Gary Vee has been. I've hung out with him maybe 4 or 5 times, and I love the man. The one area that I disagree with him is that you can't do too much content and that you should be everywhere. I think you can do too much content and that you shouldn't be everywhere. You should be in the places that you actually enjoy creating content sustainably. So for me, YouTube is best for leads, podcast is best for conversion rate, and social media is best for like reach, total reach. But in terms of leads and depth and conversion, I think that's the worst platform. And if I had to delete one, if we're playing fuck, marry, kill, I kill social media.
Wow. I've noticed just a big change in the world lately in terms of social media. So I never used to like Twitter all that much. I was on Facebook quite a bit. And then Instagram, I never really used all that much except to like look at pictures of dogs and food and stuff like that. And so Instagram is still about the same. I don't use Facebook that much anymore. And then YouTube, I watch probably 6 hours out of the day. I'm either listening or watching YouTube. And so and I also noticed one interesting thing. I don't read that many articles anymore online. And it's kind of funny because
They've lost their credibility.
Well, a lot of the people, you could just watch a video on it and it's far better than actually reading it, right?
Were you ever a reader?
I was a huge reader. I'm still like a decently large reader, but honestly, I just don't read that many articles, but I could probably list out 5 different YouTube videos I've watched today that are awesome. I can't list a single article.
That's really interesting, Neville, because you're a writer, but you don't like to consume the written word. That's interesting.
If you think about if you scroll social media for 10 minutes, think about how many words you've read though. So if I read Twitter for 10 minutes, how many words have I read? It's quite a bit.
It's a few articles.
Yeah, and it's a lot more dense than like a crappy book. So
that's just really interesting.
Yeah. So you are going to mainly YouTube. That's really interesting. How are you approaching that? Do you have like a team? Are you making them yourself in your basement, or what's going on?
Yes, I make them in my non-existent basement in Austin, Texas, where I have limestone and no basement. So I have a full-time creative director. His name's Alex, and Alex's job is to make stuff look really good. So when he came on board, we were making a ton of video content with no real strategy to how it looked. And the content, people who watched it said was amazing. They said it was fantastic. But the style of it didn't match what would grip you. It had no story arc. It didn't look super high quality. It just looked like really good content. It was best for a podcast, right? If you took the video portion away from it, the content was amazing to listen to, but visually the quality just wasn't there. So Alex's job is basically to come on and to record me doing my natural thing, which is talking, and then put a story arc to it to make it look amazing. So now that piece of content is good for video. It's good for YouTube. So podcasting is fun. It's easy. It's effortless for me. So now my next 3 years is mastering the video side of content creation.
But it kind of seems like a natural way to go from articles to video. And the reason is, whenever we first started like making the written word, we didn't have video. We didn't have phone back in the year 1600, right? So you had to have some sort of crude tool to convey information, and that was writing. Now we have the ability to take video and send it to someone else, which is how we naturally absorb information in our everyday lives. I'm looking at you, I'm hearing you, that's how we learn.
But aren't you so pissed when somebody sends you a video message?
Oh yeah, it's the worst. I'm like, this could have been a text message. Yeah. Well, I think the cool thing is now we have all these different modalities to learn. So we have the podcast, we have video, right. We have articles, we have text, we have images, we have GIFs, and soon we'll have like VR experiences. Soon it'll be implanted in your brain. So I think we're just naturally moving towards video as the primary form of content. And the coolest thing about video is I can take this video and rip the audio. That's a podcast.
So what I'm thinking about in my brain is like, is the video more natural or is the audio more natural? Like talking on the phone. I guess you're saying like face to face is the most natural, where you pick up the most nuance. Is that the argument there?
I think the thing is that this can be turned into an audio conversation. An audio conversation is much more difficult to turn into a video conversation.
Sure.
So why not just do video first and then take the audio?
But, well, sometimes, I mean, if you put a microphone in front of me, I know I feel like I can talk all day. Video, I think I'm better than most, but most people will tell you that put a camera in front of you and there's like an immediate like, wait, what's my name? What do I say in front of me? What do I do with my hands? I feel awkward. And so I don't think it's as natural from a creation standpoint, but what we're doing right now is probably the most natural modality of them all. It's like having a face-to-face conversation. There just happens to be equipment here.
So let me ask you this, because this is one thing I've noticed. Taking a video, and maybe a high quality video, like if I'm just talking into this camera, that's great. The thing is the editing. That is what I think is actually the real magic there. And it kind of reminds me when you write an article, you write a bunch of stuff over the course of a few weeks, and then you edit the article together, and that is your value as a writer.
Right.
I think the value as a video creator is editing it and making it nice and
100%
tight.
agree.
So is that what your Alex guy does for you?
1000%. That's it, right? All the magic is in the editing. I don't think video quality is nearly as important as how it is edited. And I give my team full permission to edit me relentlessly. If I repeat myself, cut it. If I'm talking in circles, take the best clip and include that. I think all of the magic is in how it's edited. And you can make anything look good if it's edited really well.
Yeah, and one thing I notice is that even whenever we make a basic slideshow type video on YouTube, if I just add a couple, like if I say like, my name is Neville Medhora, and put a little underline under it when I say Neville Medhora, that just keeps people more engaged on YouTube than if it just says Neville Medhora and it's just text and it's just static and it's just kind of boring to look at.
Are you editing your own stuff?
I'm currently editing this right now. Watch this. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, I'm manually doing this.
That's commitment.
Actually, we should switch to the auto switcher and see how it goes. So this is hands free. The robot is totally editing. So
that's commitment, Neville, that you edit your own stuff. I get completely out of creation mode if I go into like having to edit myself. So kudos.
Well, okay. So I edit most of my stuff. I have someone else who helps me with editing a lot. And actually most of my top videos are edited by someone else. But here's the thing. Here's what I hate about it. I like editing. I like doing it. I like sitting there and doing it. I don't know why. It just reminds me of college, like when I was like a computer science student for 1 year, just sitting in a coffee shop at 4 a.m. by myself, programming with headphones on. It just reminds me of that. I enjoy it. I'm not good at it. It's just I like it.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I get you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that you have a company that you invest in, and they're going to do everything that you say. How would you tell them to get the word out about their product? Are you going to tell them to do Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, a podcast, paid ads? What do you usually tell them to do?
Funny you should ask. So I'm going through this right now. So I have an investment fund that invests mostly in physical product brands. And we have one business. The business is called Keto Brownie, low carb snacks, great company.
Delicious.
Yeah, they're really good. And so we bought a significant amount of the company. And their biggest challenge is like everybody who buys from them becomes a raving fan, but they don't have a lot of exposure. So for me, I go to who do we partner with? Most entrepreneurs will sit there and go like, how do I create? What platform do I create on in order to get a lot of exposure? I say, do you really want to be a content creator, or do you want to go back to creating great products? And all of them, especially when they're creating physical type stuff, they're like, I think I have to be putting out social content. I think I have to be creating blog posts. I think I have to be creating YouTube videos, not that I want to. And I say, okay, I don't want you to do anything that you hate doing because that takes you out of your genius, which is creating great products and selling them to your existing fan base. So why don't we go out to our network and see if we can find an audience, an influencer, someone who has a blog or an email list, and give them points in the company for being the primary audience for the business. So Aubrey Marcus did this Joe Rogan, right? This is how On It got started. Aubrey partnered with Joe. Joe talked about it on the podcast. It was a good move for both of them, right? They both did extremely well. Now you hear Joe talk about On It all the time. On It grew because Joe Rogan grew. Beautiful partnership, perfect synergy between the audience and the product line. That was a beautiful partnership. And that's why On It became On It. And that's why Joe was able to charge such ridiculous fees for endorsements on his podcast. Like those two things grew together. And so I look for partnerships rather than strategies. So in this case with Keto Brownie, we're looking at a couple different, there's one blogger and there's one Instagrammer with a big email list. And those are the two people that we're talking to as potential equity partners in that company. And I know that a few emails gets us enough kind of the snowball moving in order to be able to drive up sales and create a bigger asset between the two of us. So there's several companies that we're working on in the fund that do exactly that. We invest in the business and then we use our network to find the partner rather than the strategy. And I'm agnostic as to where the audience is, as long as it's influential rather than just famous.
All right, so that's actually a good move. Try to let the product people do the product thing and the influencer
That's
people
right.
who naturally like being in front of camera and all
That's
that.
right. Like I don't want a product brand to start a podcast. I don't want them to go take their attention away from creating more products and now starting a YouTube channel. Yeah. There are some people who do both of those worlds, like Eric at Beard Brand does this extremely well. And he did a great job at the content creation and he has a great physical product business. That's lightning in a bottle, but that's so rare. Most people do that because they think they have to, because they're reading a bunch of blogs from marketers about where all the action is. Yeah. They're getting distracted from their primary business, which is selling stuff to your customers. Like for example, like these pants are from Public Rec. This is it got me with an Instagram ad, right? If Public Rec sends me a podcast episode, I'm pissed that they emailed me. But if they just send me an email that's like, hey, we have new pants for sale. I'm like, awesome, click, buy, awesome. Which result do you want? You know, if you're, right. So now, like as if you're the founder of Public Rec, don't start a podcast or a YouTube channel. I don't care. I just want to buy more from it. I just want to buy more of the product that I want. And that's the case with most brands that I don't necessarily think should be going the content route. I think they should be partnering with the people who do.
Have you been exposed to any of this like build in public stuff? I know on Twitter it's kind of big. It's not like a new concept necessarily, but it's like a lot of the younger generation, which I like some of these coder, non-coder tools, all that kind of stuff. They'll be like, I'm going to build a company, but on Twitter. So this kind of reminded me back in the day with like the personal finance blogs and stuff. We'd like be like, I'm going to try to get out of debt, and they just showcase along the way. Yeah. And so I've seen that happen, and it's kind of like their marketing channel. Like they say, we made 10K MRR, monthly recurring revenue off of this product. Here's what we did, blah, blah, blah. And people pay attention, and then people are like, oh, that's a cool product. I want to buy that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's the famous document instead of create process.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book called 12 Months to 1 Million. It's about starting your first business and getting it to $1 million in revenue. And the strategy that I recommend in order to what I call stack the deck, like have people waiting in line on launch day, is to just document the whole development of the product. Talk about the conversations that you had with your manufacturers. Talk about why you went with green instead of purple. Talk about your interviews with the people who are beta testing your product. Talk about the first prototype that comes in that sucks, and now you have to go back and recreate the entire thing, and now you're 2 months behind schedule and you're freaking stressed about it. Like talk about the times when you're placing the inventory order and it's going to cost you 12 grand and you've only got 15 and that's your life savings and you're about to burn through it and you're freaking out and you're like that stuff is what builds raving fans. But the minute that person goes into teaching mode and starts trying to talk to the audience about why their product is great, no one cares. People are interested in stories and personal stories. So if you are documenting the business development itself That's fascinating. That's the best content you can do, I think, as a new entrepreneur. But most people are trying to do the route of creating new stuff, and it's just not helpful to the business.
That's really interesting. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you have so many different brands, is SEO. What role does that play? Because I've noticed this huge tectonic shift lately in the landscape of SEO and social media. What gets more, there's podcast videos, all that stuff, which gets more attention. It used to be also like SEO was the gold standard.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really know. I don't know. What's your opinion?
I think SEO is a great long-term play for lead acquisition specifically. I think it's a great way especially if you're a content-focused business. It's a great way to get long-term leads and front-end buyers, but it takes 2 to 3 years. Full disclosure, I've burned through a couple content directors in the last few years, so I get it in theory. I guess we can say I'd love to hire an amazing SEO-focused content strategist or content director. Email me, ryan@capitalism.com. Like I'd love to hire somebody who loves the written word and really gets long form SEO and long-term SEO. And it's something we've put focus into in sprints. It's something that we will do for a while, and that's just not a way to build a real business. But I think it's a great long-term play if you love the written word and you're willing to go at it for 2 years.
Well, it also, it's like if you have a good article, like one YouTube strategy we did, we just took our top articles and made YouTube videos out of all of them.
Yeah,
and then like, because you put out a YouTube video, but it always gets consistent views because your article that's ranking well in SEO gets views. And so therefore your video gets more views.
Right.
And therefore your article gets more views and the virtuous cycle continues. Right. So there is some value in long form articles. I think there's a lot of value in them because you could turn them into other content.
You know, it's funny you say that because we had something like that happen just 2 weeks ago where one of our videos on YouTube started getting a ton of traffic and getting us a lot of YouTube subscribers. And it was a random one from a long time ago, and we couldn't figure out why this one just popped. It was getting us all these subscribers and getting us really good CPMs, and it just popped up out of nowhere. And then I was doing some like back-end research into where we were ranking on SEO, and we popped up for this article. Like we ranked number 1 for Robert Kiyosaki net worth. Like a net worth profile on capitalism.com. And embedded in that article is this video that was talking about like tax strategy from one of our events. And it was one of Robert Kiyosaki's advisors. So we just had it on there as a piece of content. And that was why the video is getting so many additional views and subscribers. So you're exactly right that co-strategy, that co-content strategy where you're using a long form piece to make a video and vice versa is a really good way to dive deep into a topic.